Hi, I'm Jana Robinson with World at Work TV. Today we will be talking about total rewards metrics, why they're important, and how we can use them. Specifically in today's segment, we will be talking about compensation and benefits metrics. Joining us today are Kerry, Chou and Leonard Sanicola, practice leaders with World at Work.
You know, there's many metrics that we can use in terms of assessing the success and progress of our compensation programs. Fortunately, being in compensation, we have access to all sorts of data, salary data, and hopefully we get our friends in the finance to lend us some finance data and other important metrics that the company can use. And we can use these to develop a picture of the success or how well our compensation programs are meeting the needs of our organization. Some of the most common metrics that you see, certainly from a pay competitive standpoint, we can assess compa ratios to determine how employees fit within their salary ranges. We can look at market indexes and indices, which indicate how an employee or groups of employees' salaries compare to the market. We, of course, have lots of salary information. We can also look at other important employee related information, such as hiring statistics. How long does it take us to fill positions, which might give us a sense for are our starting rates competitive? And if it's taking us a long time to fill positions, perhaps we need to revisit that. On the other side of the coin, we have turnover rates. What is the extent to which employees are leaving the organization? Is that trending up? Is that trending down? How does our turnover rates compare to our competitors? Is it higher or lower? And we, of course, believe that salary is an important component to retaining employees and keeping them motivated. If we see that trending up, then perhaps that is an indication that we need to look further. So those are some of the most common, and of course there's dozens more.
On the benefits side, if we were to look at three broad areas, healthcare, retirement, and absence management. On the healthcare side, some common metrics that employers like to look at is the number of inpatient hospital stays, number of emergency room visits, number of readmissions to hospitals, the number of brand versus generic prescriptions that their employees are taking. So again, being able to look at claims data in the aggregate and look at some of those metrics. On the retirement side, it could be things like the number of loans that employees might be accessing or the number of hardship withdrawals. It could also include the asset allocation of participants. Are participants all in conservative type investment funds, or are they aggressive, or what that mix might look like? For absence management, you might want to look at the number of overall disability claims that are there, or the average tenure or duration of a disability. So again, absenteeism rates. So lots of rates to look at, lots of metrics to look at on the benefit side as well.
Can you please explain what the objectives are of gathering and reporting total rewards and benefits metrics?
The reason that you measure anything is to assess performance. So one thing to keep in mind is you have to determine what's important to your organization. The goal would be to use that information to say, if I don't like that outcome, what is it I can do to influence or impact or change that outcome, whether that's impacting the behavior of employees in terms of how they react to certain programs or how they participate in programs, whether it's utilization of programs. Ultimately, you're assessing performance and determining whether or not the performance is where you'd like it to be.
What are companies really trying to achieve?
It's critical that HR in particular understands what the organization's overall goals and strategies are, the business strategies. And then from that, we are attempting to build and maintain programs which will support those strategies. Once we know what our strategies are and we've developed our programs, then we can apply the metrics to see how well are those programs overall meeting the strategies that we have. For example, if we are an organization that has a significant focus on costs, then of course we'll want to be measuring and looking at analytics and metrics that of course focus in on that. So we're looking at overall costs, program costs, salary costs, incentive costs. How have those changed year over year? Have they gone up? Have they gone down? How do those compare to our revenues and our earnings before interest and taxes, for example? So we can start looking at not only the absolute cost, but the relative cost versus other metrics. Now, on the other hand, if our goal is we want to make sure that we are attracting the absolute best and brightest, and maybe cost is no object, then we're looking at statistics around comparison of our salary surveys, making sure that if we say are focusing at the 75th percentile of the market, that we are keeping close tabs on our salary survey data and making sure that our pay levels are above most of our competitors. Really, to summarize again, the purpose is to make sure that ultimately we're meeting the business objectives, and it's those business objectives that in turn dictate what types of metrics we want to focus on.
So on the benefit side, employers often look at benefit costs per employee. How much are we spending per employee? And typically employers have a dollar figure in mind that we're not going to spend more than X amount of dollars per employee on benefit programs. If that figure is rising or above that threshold, then the organization has to determine what can we do to get that dollar figure down. And then you start analyzing through the metrics that you're following why that might be. Why has that figure risen, and what can we do to change that outcome?
So you've got your metrics data in hand. Now what?
Metrics and analytics are very much an iterative process. In other words, you're first looking at your goals and objectives. You may pick some metrics. These are the ones we want to focus on. Maybe you have KPIs, key performance indicators, within HR and with the organization. So these are metrics that you'll be reporting on a regular basis, and you can track progress that way. As your organization changes, as curveballs get thrown into the business plan, the organization may say, these are good metrics, maybe we need to add some metrics in this area. One of the problems with metrics is, of course, you can get overly focused on one metric and get so zeroed in on that metric that you sort of forget that to focus in on this metric means we're not focusing in on some other aspect of the business. From time to time, you may need to look at your metrics. You may need to add additional metrics to make sure that you're having a balanced approach to your business plan. A balanced scorecard is a great example of that. From time to time, you may need to say, that's a metric that's not important anymore.
And just to pick on that theme, it's important that whatever metrics you choose as an organization, you're discussing and communicating that with strategic business units, managers, and leaders. And Kerry mentioned scorecards. Oftentimes organizations develop dashboards or scorecards where they can track performance over time, and it's visible to everyone in the organization. Clearly, if you have a certain metric, and people's performance impact that, you want people to know what that metric is so that everyone can sort of track it and have input into that and affect that.
Kerry, some people view HR as the qualitative side of the business. How do you think metrics can help us?
There are many aspects of human resources in terms of are we meeting the needs of the organization that can actually be quite hard to measure in some respects. We, of course, can do employee surveys and try to get at how satisfied are employees. I think that metrics can be used, sometimes they can be used directly to help us assess things. Sometimes we need to measure things a little bit more indirectly. For example, let's say that we have a recognition program. For example, we're going to be giving cash awards or gift cards or something to employees. Now, we can implement that program, we can distribute some cards as rewards, but how are we really going to measure whether that cash reward or those cards have really met the intended desire of those? And that might be a little bit hard, so we might have to get a little bit creative. We can measure employee attitudes at a time before we implement the program. We implement it for a period of time, and then we go back and resurvey the employees. We look at what we spent for the cards. We talk to employees, maybe do some focus groups. One of the most important things to your point about qualitative data is we can get a sense, talking to executives, talking to employees, how are you feeling about this program? Do you think it's improving morale? And so sometimes we can't get things into hard and fast numbers, but we can still collect data, sometimes qualitative, sometimes quantitative, and then we build a picture about some of our more qualitative programs, whether they're meeting the mark.
Kerry, Lenny, thanks for joining us. For World at Work TV, I'm Jana Robinson.